One evening in Cedar Park, Texas. My wife of 7 years looked me straight in the eye and said the words that would rip through my life like a storm. I'm going to be a surrogate for my sister and her husband. Everything's already set. No hesitation. No discussion. Just a statement of fact. Delivered as casually as if she were talking about dinner. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 39 years old. A heating and air technician who spent his whole life working hard and doing right by his family. I never claimed to be a perfect man. But I've always been steady, reliable, the kind of husband and father who shows up every day. My wife, Emily, was 36, a corporate marketing manager who carried herself with confidence in every room she entered. Together, we had 3 kids: Jacob, our oldest at 7, and the twins, Lily and Noah, barely 2 years old. For years, we'd built what I thought was a strong, ordinary life. A red brick house in a quiet neighborhood. Saturday afternoons spent at the grill while the kids played tag in the yard. Sundays driving to the farmer's market, bringing home peaches and brisket. At night, we'd collapse on the couch, her legs draped across mine, the twins asleep in their cribs. Jacob tucked in with his favorite book. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. That's why her words hit like a hammer. At first, I thought I'd misheard. Maybe I'd dozed off and dreamed it. But the look in her eyes told me she wasn't joking. She had already driven to Dallas behind my back, already signed clinic papers, already drained money from our joint account to pay for hormone injections. She hadn't asked. She hadn't even hinted. She'd simply decided and left me to catch up after the fact. I sat there stunned. The noise of the television flickering in the background. The glow of the lamp stretching shadows across the room. My own house felt foreign, like I'd walked into someone else's life. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. Finally, I managed. You're going to carry another man's child, under our roof. And you didn't think I deserved a say in that. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and said flatly, "It's not his child. It's Sarah and Mark's embryo. Genetically theirs. I'm just the carrier." Her words didn't soothe me. They cut deeper. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. It wasn't about science, or technicalities, or medical terms. It was about respect, or in this case, the lack of it. My wife had made a life-altering decision without me, and she thought I'd simply nod and accept it. I wanted to shout, to rage, to demand answers. But instead, I just sat there on the edge of our bed later that night, staring at the woman who once called me her whole world. My hands shook. My heart pounded. But no words came. Inside, though, a vow was forming. Not a vow of forgiveness, not a vow of patience, but a vow of survival. I told myself, if she cuts me out of this, then she'll live without me. If she wants to walk this path alone, she'll learn what alone really feels like. See, men like me, we don't need grand speeches to make a decision. We need silence. The kind that burns through your chest until all that's left is clarity. And clarity came fast. I knew right then that our marriage had shifted onto ground that could never hold. I replayed her words over and over. I'm doing this, Michael. With or without you. That tone, it wasn't a request. It wasn't even an argument. It was final. And so, my response would be final too. Not in a flash of anger. Not in the kind of explosion that leaves holes in walls and scars in children's memories. But in something colder, sharper. A quiet withdrawal of myself from the equation. That night, while she slept in the guest room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it hum and spin in the dark. I thought about the years we'd shared, the memories we'd built, the promises we'd made at our wedding altar, promises about partnership, unity, trust. And I realized she had already broken them the moment she walked into that clinic in Dallas and signed my name out of the story. The betrayal wasn't just the act, it was the arrogance of believing I didn't matter. So I stayed silent. But inside, I began planning. Not revenge, not retaliation, but resolve. If she thought I would stand by while she carried another man's child under my roof, she was wrong. If she thought I'd keep playing the role of supportive husband while she tore the foundation out from under us, she was mistaken. That night marked the end of who we had been. The laughter around the oak table, the twins banging spoons like tiny drummers, Jacob's excited shouts of Dad's home, all of it shifted into something else. Into memories. Into echoes of a life that no longer existed. And as I lay there, wide awake, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this wasn't going to be a quiet divorce. This was going to be a reckoning. Before that night in Cedar Park when Emily dropped her bombshell, life had a rhythm that felt steady, almost unshakable. The kind of rhythm you don't question because it hums so naturally in the background that you mistake it for permanence. We lived in a quiet Texas suburb, a street lined with red brick houses and trimmed lawns. Evenings smelled of mesquite smoke from someone's barbecue. Kids pedaled their bikes until the streetlights flickered on. And on my own front porch, with Emily beside me and the twins chasing fireflies in the yard, I believed we were building something no storm could touch. Saturday mornings were for mowing the grass while Jacob scribbled chalk rockets across the driveway. Sundays meant piling into the truck and heading to the farmer's market. The bed filled with fresh peaches, honey hares, and brisket for the smoker. Afterward, we'd invite neighbors over, fire up the grill, and fill the backyard with laughter. Emily loved to host. She'd flutter around with a glass of sweet tea, her smile sharp enough to disarm anyone. I thought that was happiness. I thought those small traditions were cement, holding us together. But looking back, I realized they were more like snapshots, moments frozen before the storm rolled in. Emily had always been close to her twin sister, Sarah. The kind of closeness that went beyond ordinary sisterhood. When they were on the phone, it was like the rest of the world didn't exist. Their bond was something I admired, even envied at times. Sarah and her husband, Mark, had tried for years to have a baby. IVF, treatments, prayers, nothing worked. And through every failed attempt, Emily was there, carrying Sarah's pain as if it were her own. At first, I saw it as compassion, loyalty. But slowly, that bond turned into something else, something that began eating at the edges of our marriage. I should have noticed the signs sooner. The late-night phone calls where Emily's voice dipped low, words barely audible. The way she started slipping out onto the porch, pacing as she whispered into her phone, half smiles tugging at her lips, smiles she once saved for me. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just sisters confiding, just family leaning on family. But then came the unexplained trips to Dallas, a day here, a weekend there, always with the same excuse: Sarah needs me. I wanted to believe her. God help me. I did believe her, for a while. But each mile she drove north, each time she brushed past my questions with a quick kiss and a vague answer, I felt something I couldn't name settling heavy in my chest. I remember one evening especially. We were on the porch swing. Our ritual after dinner. Jacob was in the yard, tossing a football higher than he could catch. The twins toddled after lightning bugs, their giggles like music. Emily sat beside me, sweet tea in her hand. But her eyes weren't on the kids. They weren't on me either. They were distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. I asked her what was on her mind. She smiled faintly and said, "Just tired." But I knew it wasn't just exhaustion. It was detachment. You don't notice it happening in the moment. Not when you love someone. The shift is quiet. It creeps in like a draft under a locked door. Little things pile up: shorter answers, distracted glances, laughter that doesn't reach the eyes. Looking back, I see it clear as daylight. But then I told myself every marriage has seasons, that if I stayed steady, she'd find her way back. I didn't realize that while I was holding on, Emily was already slipping away. It's strange how ordinary moments turn into lifelines once you know the end is coming. I think about the nights when Jacob would run to the door shouting, "Dad's home," the twins banging their spoons at the dinner table like tiny drummers, while Emily and I laughed about crayon scribbles on the walls. At the time, I thought those moments were just routine, the fabric of daily life. Now I understand they were the calm before the storm, the last stretch of clear skies before the clouds rolled in. Because while I was grilling in the backyard, believing tomorrow would look just like today, Emily was driving to Dallas, whispering into her phone, carving a future that no longer had me in it. And here's the truth about betrayal: it doesn't strike like lightning. It builds like thunder, far off at first, until suddenly, it's overhead, shaking the ground beneath you. By the time I realized what was happening, the storm had already broken. It was a Thursday night in late summer. The kind where the air outside feels heavy, and the cicadas never stop humming. The kids were finally asleep. The house was quiet. And I was half watching some late-night show on the couch. Emily sat across from me, scrolling on her phone. Her face lit by the glow of the screen. Then she set it down, folded her hands, and looked at me. Calm. Steady. Almost businesslike. "Michael," she said, "I've already committed to the surrogacy. It's happening." No hesitation. No tremor in her voice. Just certainty. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. I stared at her, waiting for the smirk, the half-laugh, the gotcha. But none came. She just held my gaze like she was telling me what time it was. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, my throat dry. "So you'll carry another man's child under my roof, and you don't think that concerns me?" Her jaw didn't even tighten. Her expression didn't waver. She simply said, "It's not his child. It's Sarah's and Mark's embryo. I'm just the carrier. If you loved me, you'd respect this." Those words, "if you loved me," you'd respect this, cut deeper than the decision itself. Because love, to me, was built on trust, on partnership, and what she was asking wasn't respect. It was surrender. I shook my head slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. Respect doesn't mean blind obedience. Respect doesn't mean you make a life-altering decision without even telling me. She crossed her arms, defiance in every line of her face. "This is about my sister. She's been through hell. I'm not going to watch her suffer another year without doing something." I sat back, heat rising in my chest. "And what about me, about us? You're not just making a choice with your body, you're making a choice with our marriage, with our home, with our kids." You blindsided me. Her eyes hardened. "Then maybe we're not as strong as I thought." That was the moment I realized we weren't just on different pages. We were in different books entirely. The conversation ended there. Not with shouting, but with silence. She stood, walked past me without another word, and disappeared into the guest room. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, and with them went the last illusion that we were partners. From that night on, the air in the house changed. Not in explosive arguments or slammed doors, but in something worse. Distance. We moved around each other like strangers. We spoke only about the basics, the kids, groceries, bills. Everything else was swallowed by silence. She took phone calls in the kitchen. Her voice hushed, but not enough that I couldn't hear fragments. The next appointment. Embryo transfer. "Mark and Sarah are so grateful." I would walk past, my chest tightening. Every syllable a reminder that I had been erased from the equation. One evening, I opened the fridge and found a white box labeled fertility medications. Inside were vials, syringes, instructions. I set it on the counter and waited for her to notice. When she walked in, she barely glanced up from her phone. "They came early. I need to start treatments this week." No apology, no hesitation. I stared at her. The box between us, like a wall. "You didn't think this warranted another conversation." She finally looked up, her face flat. "We're past conversations. Michael, I told you I'm doing this." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're ignoring my feelings. You don't care that you're pushing me away, do you?" She rolled her eyes, exasperated. "Stop being dramatic. It's 9 months. Then I hand the baby over. It doesn't replace our kids. I'm helping my sister. That's all." I shook my head, my voice turning cold. "You can rationalize it however you want, but if you go through with this, I promise you, I won't stay in this marriage." Her arms tightened across her chest. "You're free to leave if your pride can't handle my decision." Pride. That word stung, as if my objections were nothing more than fragile ego, as if protecting the foundation of our marriage was vanity, not necessity. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I let her pick up that white box, turn her back on me, and walk down the hall. And as I watched her go, a truth settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't a fight we could patch up. This was a fracture running straight through the middle of everything we had built. In the days that followed, the silence grew heavier than any argument ever could. She stayed in the guest room, sometimes on the couch. I stayed in the master bedroom, tucking our kids in each night, while she scrolled on her phone in another part of the house. We didn't sleep in the same bed anymore. We didn't laugh on the porch swing. She didn't look at me like a husband. I didn't look at her like a partner. We were coexisting. Nothing more. And with every unopened box of syringes, every whispered phone call with Sarah and Mark, every night she chose the guest room over our bed, I realized more and more this wasn't just distance. This was betrayal. Not the kind that comes with another man's perfume or lipstick on a collar, but betrayal all the same, the kind that says, "You don't matter. Your voice doesn't count." And for me, that was worse than any affair. The night I told Emily, "If you go through with this, I won't stay," I meant every word. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a bluff. It was the plain truth. But she only crossed her arms, her eyes sharp, and fired back. "Then leave. If your pride can't handle it." Pride. That's what she called it, as if it wasn't about respect, or marriage, or the fact that she'd already signed away our future without me, as if the very foundation of trust between us could be reduced to a man's fragile ego. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I stopped pleading. I stopped trying to explain myself to a woman who had no interest in listening, and instead, I did what any man who's been pushed too far does. I started planning for survival. 2 days later, I sat in my truck outside a law office in downtown Austin, staring at the brass letters on the door. I'd rehearsed the decision 100 times in my head, but walking in made it real. The attorney, a calm man in his 50s, let me lay it all out: how Emily had drained our joint account for fertility treatments, forged my signature on withdrawal forms, and committed to carrying her brother-in-law's child without so much as a conversation. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, words I'll never forget. "You have grounds. Texas requires a 1-year separation before finalizing divorce. But we can start the process immediately." I walked out with paperwork in hand, the weight pressing on my chest heavier than any load I'd ever carried. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about drawing a line I couldn't uncross. Life at home turned hostile after that. Emily must have sensed what I was doing. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. She started inviting Sarah and Mark into our house like it was their personal planning center. I came home one Saturday afternoon, sweaty from mowing the lawn, only to find them sprawled on my couch. A glossy baby catalog spread across the coffee table, sticky notes marking pages for cribs and strollers. Emily sat between them, her hand resting on her barely showing belly, flipping pages with a glow in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Mark looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey man, we were just planning for the baby." I froze in the doorway, the heat rising in my chest hotter than the Texas sun outside. "Why don't you buy all this for your own house?" I asked flatly. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "We just thought it'd be easier for Rachel." She caught herself, then corrected. "For Emily to have what she needs here while she's pregnant." I cut her off. "Don't treat my home like your personal baby headquarters." Emily's cheeks flushed red. "You're being unreasonable." I snapped. "No. Maybe you should show me the same respect you're bending over backward to give them." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Mark shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Sarah as if to say, "Let's just leave." But Sarah wasn't moving. She had that twin sister stare, hard and unyielding. "It's not like we enjoy being here, Michael. We're just trying to make this as painless for Emily as possible." My anger flared hot. Painless for Emily. This stopped being about family the moment you three decided to cut me out. If you're so concerned, set up your own house for the baby. Buy every item in that catalog. But don't make my home your staging ground. Emily's voice cracked through the tension, sharp and final. "You can't ban them from the house. This is my home too." I looked right at her, my jaw tight. "You should have thought about that before you invited them into something that was never my choice." Sarah's lips pressed thin, and finally she grabbed Mark's arm. They walked out without another word, leaving a silence heavier than their presence. But it wasn't relief I felt. It was fury. Because even in my own house, I no longer felt like the man of the home. That was the day I stopped reacting and started preparing. Every evening, after tucking the kids in, I sat at the dining table with a growing stack of papers. Bank statements highlighting charges from the Dallas clinic. Screenshots of transactions Emily had authorized without my knowledge. Copies of documents where my signature appeared in ink I never wrote. My lawyer's voice echoed in my head. This isn't about emotion. It's about facts. Build your case like a wall, brick by brick. So I did. Quietly. Methodically. Every receipt became a brick. Every forged form. Another layer. Every transaction. Another stone in the foundation of the case I was building. Emily went about her days as if nothing had changed. She took calls openly with Sarah and Mark, her voice filling the kitchen with talk of embryo transfers and ultrasound dates. She carried on with treatments as if I were invisible. And maybe, in her mind, I was. But what she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was that I was no longer the man she could dismiss with a shrug. I was no longer the husband pleading to be heard. I was a man drawing a line. And I was preparing for the reckoning to come. As Emily's pregnancy advanced, the gap between us turned into a canyon. Her belly grew. But so did the distance. What had once been small slights became daily battles of silence. She began asking for favors. At first, little things. Can you grab me some water? Or will you stop by the store for prenatal vitamins? I didn't hesitate. My answer was always the same. Ask Mark. He's the father of that child. The more her body showed, the more requests came: help with laundry, lifting groceries, picking up the twins so she could rest. Each time, I held the line. You made this choice without me. Emily. Live with it without me. Her parents didn't take it quietly. The phone calls started with her mother, scolding me through the receiver. Michael. How could you be so cruel? She's doing something beautiful for her sister. She's sacrificing her body. And you're punishing her for it. I kept my voice flat. Maybe ask your daughter why she did it without telling me. I owe her nothing for a child that isn't mine. Her father called next. His tone heavier. Almost threatening. Son. You're walking down a dark path. If you don't step up and support her, you'll regret it. I actually smirked. I already regret trusting her with our marriage. Don't mistake my silence for weakness. They hung up on me. Furious. But I didn't care. Their daughter had gambled with my trust. She lost. And I wasn't going to pick up the pieces for her. The breaking point came late one night, past midnight. I woke to the pounding of fists against my bedroom door. Emily's voice was strained. Panicked. Michael, my water broke, please. I need to get to the hospital. I opened the door and saw her hunched over, one hand clutching the wall, the other gripping her stomach. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead, her face pale with pain. For a moment, muscle memory kicked in, memories of holding her hand through Jacob's birth, of coaching her breathing when the twins came into the world. But the bitterness hit harder. I locked eyes with her and said flatly, I'm not taking you to the hospital. That's Mark's job. Her eyes went wide. He's not answering his phone. Sarah's not answering either. Please. Michael, I need you. I shrugged. Stepping back. Call an ambulance. She stared at me. Disbelief, mixing with desperation. You can't just let me suffer here. I met her gaze coldly. Watch me. And with that, I closed the door. Minutes later, I heard her fumbling with her phone. The wail of sirens soon followed. Red and blue lights flashing across the walls as paramedics carried her out. I didn't move from my bed. A part of me felt guilt tugging at the edges, memories of promises I'd once made, vows I'd once spoken. But I shoved it down. She had chosen this. She had chosen to cut me out. And I wasn't about to step back in for a child that wasn't mine. The baby was born early. A little girl. Small but stable. I heard through her mother that Sarah had her own complications. Leaving Mark bouncing between 2 hospital rooms, Emily stayed for several days before coming home. Pale and exhausted. Carrying the newborn in a portable car seat, she set it down gently on the floor, the infant stirring with soft cries. I stared at that tiny pink bundle. A living reminder of the decision that had destroyed our marriage. Why is she here? I asked coldly. Shouldn't she be with Sarah? Emily sighed, sinking into the couch. Sarah's still in the hospital. Mark's overwhelmed. They asked me to keep her for a while. I scoffed. They asked or you volunteered, either way. Let's be clear, I won't touch her. I won't feed her. She's not my responsibility. A tear slid down Emily's cheek. But she said nothing. The days that followed turned the house into a war zone. The baby's cries echoed through the hallways day and night. Emily shuffled through the house like a ghost, dark circles under her eyes. Moving on, fumes and sheer desperation. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she knocked on my door. "Michael, please, I just need half an hour of sleep. Can you hold her?" I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "Call Mark. Call your mother. This isn't my problem." Her lips trembled, her voice raw. "She's innocent. She didn't ask for this." I didn't flinch. Neither did I. She turned away, shoulders shaking, and disappeared into the dark with the screaming infant. Every wail, every sob, every sleepless night was her consequence to carry, and I made sure she carried it alone. The day of the hearing came, and with it, the end of pretending. We sat on opposite sides of a polished wooden table in a Travis County courtroom, lawyers at our shoulders, silence thick between us. Emily's attorney went first. His words dripped with sympathy, painting her as a devoted wife abandoned in her time of need. He described me as cold, unfeeling, a man who turned his back on a woman carrying life. The story he told made her look selfless, made me look cruel. Emily dabbed her eyes at the right moments, her voice breaking as she testified. "I just wanted to help my sister. I never thought my husband would leave me for it." For a second, I almost wondered if the judge would believe it. But then it was my lawyer's turn. Calmly, methodically, he laid out the facts. He presented bank statements showing withdrawals from our joint account, thousands spent without my knowledge. He produced forms with my signature, forged by Emily's hand. He detailed how she had gone to Dallas clinics behind my back, committed to contracts without discussion, and chosen to carry her brother-in-law's child without her husband's consent. Then he made the point, no argument could erase the baby was not mine. Not biologically, not legally, not in any sense of the word. The courtroom was silent as the evidence stacked higher and higher. By the time my lawyer finished, there was no emotion left in the room, only the weight of truth. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, spoke clearly, her tone leaving no room for interpretation. "Emily's actions," she said, "showed a blatant disregard for marital partnership. The ruling was swift. I owed no obligations toward the surrogate child. Primary custody of our 3 children was awarded to me, and Emily was ordered to repay part of the funds she had misused." Emily's face crumpled as the words fell. Sarah and Mark sat in the back, their heads bowed, the glow of victory they'd once felt long gone. As for me, I felt the weight lift, not triumph, not gloating, just relief. I walked out of that courtroom with clarity. Respect and honesty are the foundation of any marriage. Emily gave me neither, and that's why I had no regrets. When the court ruling came down, Emily moved in with her mother, financially unstable, juggling part-time jobs. She became a shadow of the woman I once knew. Sarah and Mark, the couple she sacrificed so much for, soon found their miracle baby wasn't the solution they'd dreamed of. Medical bills stacked up, arguments grew louder, and what was meant to bring joy only exposed cracks in their marriage. Meanwhile, my life took a different shape, one I could finally call peaceful. Friday nights became pizza nights. Jacob laid out the toppings. The twins argued over cheese, and the house filled with laughter again. Saturdays meant football in the yard, Jacob running routes while Lily and Noah chased after him. Evenings ended with movies on the couch, the kind of quiet that felt like healing instead of suffocation. One night, as I tucked Jacob in, he asked softly, "Dad, do you still love Mom?" I sat beside him, choosing my words carefully. "I'll always care, Jacob, because she's your mom. But sometimes when trust is broken, things change, and that's okay." He nodded, as if the simple truth was enough, and in that moment, I knew he and his brother and sister would remember not the fights, not the tension, but the fact that I stayed, that I showed up. Emily had chosen autonomy, and she got it. I chose dignity and I kept it. That became my freedom, my clarity, and my legacy. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story that might hit closer to home than you think.